You're listening to Change Your POV podcast, episode 18.
Even something as simple. I had a conversation today with someone, 2 continents away from me, 2 or 3 continents or so. And, I've had a conversation with them through video chat. And how amazing is that? I have friends literally around the world, friends and business contacts. I've done business with people around the world.
Welcome to Change Your POV podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Today I'm here with Terry Scott. Long before Terry served in the United States Air Force as an information management specialist for 4 years, she knew she wanted to be an entrepreneur. She transferred her military administrative skills into the call center customer service industry. Later, she transferred those communication skills, services, and sales skills into her freelance copywriting business. Terry has produced thousands of SEO blog posts for digital agencies. Over the past 5 years, she's developed a respectable portfolio of content marketing articles for small business publishers. In her most recent venture, Terry has launched Twist of Lemonade virtual assistant services. You can find more at www.twistoflemonade.com. Welcome to the show, Terry. How you doing?
Hi, Eddie. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, no problem. So let's, my audience is primarily, veterans or even those that are in the military or those that have just recently transitioned out. And a lot of them are interested in, that transition process, and everyone has a different experience, some good, some bad, some horrible, and otherwise. First, before we get down that road, why don't you take a minute and tell us a little bit about you?
Okay, great. Well, as you mentioned, I served in the Air Force here in San Antonio, Texas for 4 years at the former Kelly Air Force Base. And I was in information management, which in the civilian world would be defined as an administration clerk. And I worked for an intel command, served all 4 years here in San Antonio, except for 3 months when I did temporary duty over at Riyadh in Saudi Arabia in 1994. And I stayed in from 1992 to 1996. Really interesting how I came to work in that field. I, as you mentioned, knew that I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship. I didn't quite know how, but I had it in the back of my mind. So I had the point of view that as a business owner, you should at least have a working knowledge of all processes of your business. Even if you're not the person who does it, you should be able to jump in there and do it. So I thought that learning administration would be great. It would be a great path for me to learn office management. So that's how I came to sign up and volunteer to work as an information management specialist.
So was the Air Force what you thought it was going to be when you went in initially?
No, for a few reasons. Actually, my father was in the Air Force for 10 years. He's Vietnam vet era from 74 to 84. So it was a totally different world. It was a totally different Air Force when I came in. A lot of what defined my era was, number one, coming out of that first Gulf War. And I'm actually classified as a Persian Gulf era. And number two, the country was going through a recession really similar to the one that we just went through. Not quite as bad, but close.
Right.
So part of that, there were a lot of base closures at that time. I thought it was going to be like my father and, transfer to other bases every few years. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So
You got to stay in one spot, huh?
I did.
That's good. So how do you define success?
That's a good question. As I've come to understand success now, it's being able to create a life that, to sound cliche, I guess, a life of your dreams, but to be able to find a way to take the dream and make it a reality. And that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always mean that you have to earn tons of money, even though successful people certainly do earn money, and money is a great thing. It can offer you a lot of freedom. But I'm inspired by stories by people who started out going to college and maybe they landed in careers where they were making pretty decent to great money, but they weren't happy. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's not successful. But then they transferred into career fields or industries where they made a fraction of the money, but they were fulfilled and they were happy and they were using the energy, their talents that they felt they were put on this earth to do, to help people or to just use their talents in a way that felt right for them. So to me, that's success.
And it's funny you say that because I've asked this same question to many folks now, especially along this journey of interviewing folks. And no one to date has ever said money or some type of a monetary type of value is what defines success for them. It's very similar to what you just said. It's about passion. It's about doing what you love to do. And obviously everybody needs money. You got to pay bills and eat and do have a roof over your head, things like that. But that's really not the definition of success, because you're right. There's people out there that have tons of money and they're just not happy, and they may be successful in terms of what's in their bank account, but they're not successful in relationships or any other type of endeavors they may have in their life. What influences did you come to rely on to help you make you successful in your endeavors?
Well, that is a loaded question. I have to say, number one, I can't say that I had guidance in becoming successful. I learned growing up a lot of what not to do. I think that I was blessed with a lot of drive, personal drive, definitely curiosity. I've been a lifelong reader.
Mm-hmm.
I was the kid where, books, weird as it sounds, were my best friends. My parents definitely didn't have a lot of, spending money, and there were three of us kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been the person where if I wanted to learn to do something, I picked up a book, and then I was taught from early to read the paper, pay attention to the news. So I see now that fed my curiosity. And so if there was something I wanted to learn or take on, I just kind of taught myself to do it or align myself. And even now, a lot of what I do is self-taught, either through reading books or articles and just positioning myself with the right people to learn. So,
Nice. So, talk to me briefly about your transition out of the Air Force. How did that go for you, and where did you find yourself?
that was a really interesting time. I was 24 years old and I didn't have the best transition out for a few reasons. Kind of going back to an earlier question, you were saying how was the Air Force different for me in my experience? And I know in my father's time, and I kept hearing about the old Air Force when I first came in, when an NCO took a young, in my case, airman under their wing and really guided them along. I found out when I came along, it was every man for themselves and you're on your
Mm,
own. So it was definitely that way when I got out. And as I talked to other veterans, in my era, they would talk about how they were really guided through things like getting their disability package going or
right,
really
right.
transitioning into civilian life with jobs and different things. I went to a few mandatory sessions, but I was very much on my own.
Mm,
On the other hand, I was really involved with a church group in the community that took a lot of my focus and time. And, my focus, I didn't set myself up for success. I don't think I knew how to set myself up for success. I knew that I had this GI Bill and I wanted to
mm-hmm.
go to school, but I didn't have a plan and a path for making things happen. And I just knew I needed to get a job because for 4 years, my grown up job was the Air Force.
Right. So, did you get a job with a company out of the Air Force, or did you immediately start to work for yourself?
No, that came many years later. So I worked in the community for a telemarketing company where I started off doing outbound and then I did inbound customer service. And that started in earnest my call center and customer service career from
Mm-hmm.
96 through about 2007. Yeah.
Okay.
hmm
God bless you, because I'm telling you, call center work is definitely challenging. I've I've known several people that have gone down that road, and you learn how to communicate well with people over the phone, and you also learn a lot about yourself in terms of your threshold for patience, right?
It absolutely, there are some days better than others, and I worked for different companies as well, and that helped. Looking back, it was helpful for me to have a different experience of working in starting with direct response sales, and then
Mm-hmm.
working with Citibank at the time, now Citigroup. So I worked in their retirement plan services. There was internet, so lots of different industries that I learned to have experience with, but they all had the same thread of learning how to market and communicate and convert and
Right.
answer questions. But there were definitely times that you really questioning what you're doing with your life. And I actually did take a break a time or two to go to college.
Okay. So before we go down the college road, because I'm interested in that as well, we've talked a lot about success thus far, but let's flip the script for a minute
Mhm.
and let's talk about what would you say has been your greatest failure along the way?
Gosh, there were a lot for professional and personal reasons at that time. I would say overall, greatest failure is just not having a firm roadmap for my life. And just looking back, I didn't know how. I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
those examples. So when you're a young person, because when you're 24, you really are still a young person
Right.
and you're not fully formed as a human being, and everything else. And you are on your own. It's really, trial by fire and trial and failure. And so there are a lot of failures to where, as I matured and as I learned better, I did better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't have success without failure, right?
Absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you really do have to go through the school of hard knocks and it'll make or break you.
So as an entrepreneur, you've got, whether it's a goal or a dream or you're working on a project and it starts to fail or falter in some way. How do you know when it's time to pull the plug or that you should probably drive on and try to make it work?
That is a very good question. That's something I've had to ask myself. I actually wrote an article about it. And just as a side note, I love the show Shark Tank.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And sometimes you'll see some of the entrepreneurs on there with an idea, and they're told, you know what, it's just time to let this idea go,
Mm-hmm.
or you're close. I think for me, just really looking at going back to what I know I want to do with my life, the purpose I believe I'm here for, and is what I'm doing in line with that purpose, or is it taking me from that purpose?
Right.
I do believe that sometimes a person can want something, you want it so bad, and you put in time and energy, but there does come a point you have to be wise enough to know when it's time to let it go. And I think just for my personal life, there have been instances where I had to let some things go. I've had to let dreams die. I've had to be patient on things, a lot of dreams deferred. So that helps me with business to know, okay, maybe you need to tweak this. Maybe you need to take a few steps backwards so that you can be stronger when you take steps forward. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that just comes with life experience and wisdom of going through things in your personal life that you can use those lessons in your professional life.
So talk to me briefly about, what you've got going on now with this new virtual assistant pursuit that you've started and kind of, what are the types of services that you offer and what type of, customers do you service and where does that passion come from?
That's actually a great transition from our last question. So, my virtual assistant business came about from me questioning myself, my services as a content marketing writer, producer, manager, and going it alone as a freelancer as opposed to working for a company, and just thinking, you know what, I know that I have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I know I have the skill sets. I know that I have all these years of various experience. How can I put everything together, consolidate it, and make it all work, and use my service skills and my ability to really hone in on what my clients and my customers need and help them to strategize. And that's how I came up with the
Mm-hmm.
virtual assistant business. The services that I offer are general administration, your clerical work, telephone services in which I would have clients forward me their calls so I can answer them. Some industries, for example, real estate, the realtor misses out on a lot of calls because they're busy with the client or they're just not available certain times a day. They have events like open houses, and so people need directions. And there's people in certain industries, they need to focus on the larger task.
Hmm.
And it would be great for them to have somebody to answer the smaller questions like directions or small, lightweight customer service inquiries. Maybe they don't feel like having their phone ringing off the hook all day long when they can have someone taking care of that, and they can free their mind to focus on the larger task or planning, things of that nature. So that's where the telephone services come in. I'm continuing to write and integrate my content writing through my digital services, and that involves content marketing articles, that involves social media management, and that's huge.
Hmm.
So many people have started their social media platforms and their accounts, but they just don't have time to manage it. They don't know how to manage it, to maximize it, to use it effectively. It's overwhelming for them. A lot of people set up accounts because they hear that it's something that they should do, but they don't know how to make it work.
Right. What type of platforms do you help your clients with?
The big ones, your Facebooks, your Twitters. Pinterest is one that people overlook, but for certain industries, it could be a monster as far as
Hmm.
getting them conversions, getting them sales.
And I don't know about your experience, but in my experience, a lot of the companies, particularly or smaller type companies like your realtors, they'll go one way or the other. They'll either have very little social media presence, or they'll try to get involved with every platform known to man. Right?
Hmm.
What's your recommendation for the small to mid-sized companies in terms of how many social platforms is really needed to be relevant these days?
That's a very nuanced question. I think I would answer that by saying first, understand your brand, understand your industry, and how you're branding yourself as an industry professional and as a brand. Then don't look at the quantity of platforms, look at your targets. Where are they? I look at
Hmm.
social media platforms as like neighborhood hangouts, or a neighborhood grill or pub or something of that nature. You go to different locations, they're going to have different clientele. So you have to figure out where are your clientele at. Then you want to go to them. So that's number one. Number two,
Hmm.
it's crucial to learn how to use each platform natively. And what that means is learning how to use it appropriately as it pertains to the culture of that platform. For example, Facebook allows for longer form, more essay style content.
Hmm.
On the other hand, when people just try to blitz people with, spam, look at my site, or, buy, when they try to approach social media platforms like Facebook like you would a print ad, then it doesn't work. Then you have Twitter where you only have 140 characters, so you really have to be able to condense your message in an engaging, inviting way within 140 characters. So again, understand your brand, understand your target audience, understand how to use each platform natively, and then you'll figure out which one works best for you, because you can't put content on each platform the way you would on others. So
Right.
all those things are really important to understand, those nuances. And then I'd worry about how many platforms last. I would say master a few at first. If it's appropriate for you to take on another platform, then do it.
Hmm.
If you find that you're converting using one or two, then stick to what works.
Yeah. So what I excuse me, what I hear you saying is every platform essentially has its own etiquette, right? Its own communication kind of parameters and what's acceptable, and if you try to use one platform's etiquette on another platform, it's not going to be received very well.
No, people will reject you.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
you just have to understand. And another thing, people should understand that social media is social. There is a huge difference between presenting yourself on social media and presenting yourself on a flyer, a print ad, or a radio ad, TV ad.
Hmm.
Those platforms from the past, you talked at people. It's really important on social media to understand how to talk to people.
Right. So tell the listeners how you've been able to leverage your military experience into these endeavors that you found yourself.
How I've been able to leverage are the values that I learned in the military. One thing is
Mm.
protocol, as we were just talking about, learning how to use each platform natively. So I understand protocol. One of the biggest mistakes that companies make, and even some large ones that should know better, are just horrible protocol, horrible etiquette, horrible content that alienates people, ruins their brands, their PR disasters. And I know for certain in the Air Force was very big on image and PR and how you present yourself, and drilling it in us that, you're not an individual who happens to be in the Air Force. You represent the brand of the Air Force in the
Mm-hmm.
community, on base, after hours. So it's really important to understand how you present yourself to people.
Right.
So that is an important skill set that I have. If a client were to trust me on social media, and I've had clients say to me, I'm really worried about you representing me on social media because we've had people make us look bad.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't want to make any of my clients look bad. I don't want to make myself look bad, but definitely having that background of knowing how to carry myself and protocol helps. So there's
Right.
that. I'm thinking about something else too. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Oh, also emotional discipline.
Mm.
Another
Big one.
huge mistake that people make, particularly on social, is, and I can't think of any way to say it, but kind of diarrhea of the mouth. Not
Yeah.
thinking before they hit that send button,
Yeah.
not thinking about how they represent themselves, letting themselves spew, and just not thinking about how they're coming across. You're not going to convert if you're alienating people, if you're making yourself look bad.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you really do have to ignore certain things that are going on, certain energies, and not be afraid to use that block button for, the
Mm-hmm.
crazies that will come at you
Right.
sometimes. And just really put the blinders on with your brand, your mission, and be about your mission, be about your focus.
Not everything deserves a response, right?
You cannot. And definitely the military taught me emotional discipline.
Mm-hmm. So, what advice would you give young career professionals coming straight out of the military, whether it be the Air Force or other, that are interested in starting their own business or small venture?
I would say the first thing is to just know that you can. The military model, I've figured out, is one of everyone using their talents and skills for a greater good, and that's a beautiful thing. But the great thing about being an entrepreneur is you get to be an individual, and so that could be a huge mental switch. In the military, it's very regimented. There's regs and publications, for everything, from how you do your job, how you wear your uniform, uh, this, that, and the other. When you are an entrepreneur, you get to set those rules. So that can be really intimidating for someone who's not used to that. So
Mm-hmm.
I would advise them to make the mental switch that it's okay to set the rules as you see fit. I would really advise them to sit down, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Pen and paper works great. Just brainstorm what it is you want to do. What can you bring to the table that is of real value? And think about giving your clients and customers value for their money. And then think
Mm-hmm.
about every detail about how you're going to implement this. Is it realistic for you? Again, you don't have to start out expensively. You can use the most simple tools, and then when you start to earn as you're bootstrapping, you can scale up and you'll learn what to do. Definitely surround yourself with people who are already doing what you are on the path of wanting to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mentors are key, but understand that at the end of the day, it is your business, and your mentor, hopefully, you'll get one that is honestly invested in your success. But at the end of the day, it is your business. You get to make the final calls, and whatever happens, good, bad, or ugly, is your responsibility.
So, what I hear you saying is, entrepreneurial or not, going into business for yourself or not, you can't succeed without the help of others. They don't necessarily have to be in your business, but they've got to be, close to you enough to be able to provide you with some assistance, some guidance. You can't go it alone, is what I'm hearing.
There will come a point where you can't go it alone, but I will also say that mentors don't have to be people that you see face to face. They don't even
Mm-hmm.
have to be people you talk to on the phone or through social media. You can be mentored by reading a book, as I talked about before. Just be curious. There's all types of resources on Amazon. Google is your best friend in the world. Pull up
Yep.
some articles, and get to know some thought leaders who are speaking your language, quote unquote, and they can
Yep.
be your virtual mentors.
Right. That's good advice. I like that. So if you were to hop into a time machine and go back and have a conversation with your earlier self as you were transitioning out of the military, what advice would you give yourself now?
Don't be afraid of tapping into your talents. That is so loaded because everything I'm able to do now is because of the technology that's available now that just wasn't around in 1996,
Right.
wasn't
Yep.
thought of. We couldn't imagine,
Mm-hmm.
could take place. Even something as simple. I had a conversation today with someone, 2 continents away from me, 2 or 3 continents or so. And, I've had a conversation with them through video chat. And how amazing is that? I have
Mm-hmm.
friends literally around the world, friends and business contacts. I've done business with people around the world. We couldn't have imagined that in 1996. So,
So that kind of, I mean, talking about your business as a virtual assistant,
mm-hmm.
right? So talk to me about kind of the way that technology has been able to leverage that type of stay at home, work from anywhere. You really, there's no borders anymore.
No.
There's no time zones anymore. I mean, what does our landscape look like 10 years from now?
Well, gosh. Um, I can't even begin to imagine because technology changes so quickly. Um, Before you think about things like Twitter, for example, it really came into play around 2007, 2008. And now, it is a dominant force. Facebook, maybe what, 10, 11 years old. They're so much a part of our lives. So I can't begin to imagine what the next big thing is going to be 10 years from now. And the things we're using now might be obsolete. There's
Mm-hmm.
various platforms, like, for example, what was that platform, MySpace? No one uses that
All
now, but it
right.
was very important when it came out then.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't even begin to imagine where we're going to be 10 years from now. But I do know that smart businesses, be it the brick or mortar, need to transfer or make a way for people to be able to take advantage of the global marketplace. There's no reason for anyone not to be able to work from home, or work anywhere around the world as long as they have a decent internet connection, as long as they have access to free resources like Skype, Google. There's Google Hangouts. You can make videos on YouTube. There's so many ways to make it work nowadays that there's just no excuse to not be a global village anymore and take advantage of global commerce. And that's both sides, as an entrepreneur, as a brick and mortar corporation. It's just all possible. But it's great for small business people who, for reasons like raising children, if they're disabled, and that's a big thing for me because I do have disability issues,
Mm.
and they do prevent me at this point from working a traditional 8 to 5 brick and mortar position. Um, Working from home allows me to manage my health in a way
Right.
that makes sense for me, but allows me to work efficiently and offer great value to my clients.
Right, and like we were talking about before we actually went on recording the call, there's there's always going to be a need for brick and mortar. Like I mentioned, if you're a dentist, for example, you can't go virtual, right? As a dentist, you kind of actually need a brick and mortar place. Customers, or say, not really customers. I guess they are, but your patients will need to have a place to come and meet you. But that's not to say that if you're a dentist you couldn't outsource some of the, office or clerical work to someone virtually, right?
Absolutely. There's actually a loose, I hate to call it cottage industry because it's a little bit bigger than that, but there's a term called digital nomads. There are people who travel around the world and are able to take their jobs with them and live wherever they like. And that's actually one of my aspirations. Travel is in my blood. As I mentioned, my father was in the military for 10 years, and then I was able to join the military. I've lived here in Texas for all my adult life, but I'm originally from the East Coast in Philadelphia. And, I've been to several states in the States and lived overseas. So as long as I'm able to continue my business in a way that, I can provide value to my clients and keep up with them and be responsive and reliable, there's no reason why I can't continue to work from anywhere.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned before briefly about college. Let's go back to that for a minute.
Sure.
So you went to college. What was your degree in?
I have not finished yet. I'm a work in progress in that area, but I definitely intend on finishing my degree. I was a journalism major.
Oh, nice. And were you able to take advantage of the GI Bill for that?
Yes, I have used a great deal of my GI Bill for that.
That's an awesome benefit. Anybody that gets out, you definitely need to take advantage of it. Even if you're not interested in, going all the way, taking some certificates, associate's degree, just anything at all. It's a great benefit, and it will only help you out in anything that you do, whether it be entrepreneurship, working for yourself, or working for a company or organization. So let's talk about experience versus a college degree.
Hmm.
Now, this comes up quite a bit, especially with the veteran community. You come out of the military and you've got a lot of people think that they've got unmarketable skills because they were a combat arms MOS, and other people have better marketable skills because they can get a job doing what they were doing when they were in the military.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, regardless of what MOS you had when you were in or what branch you were in, you've left the service with marketable skills, and you don't have to have been in a very high rank either. I mean, down at your lowest level E1s, everyone that goes through boot camp or basic training, whatever it's called, in different services, you learn things like working together as a team. You learn things like effective communication. And there's another one. It's an invaluable skill, and it's learning how to follow orders, right? And you have, I mean, because no matter where you go, you're gonna have a boss. If you work for yourself, you still have a boss, and that boss is your clients, your customers, people that you're servicing, and that's who you're working for in order to earn your money. And you have to be able to take direction, communicate effectively, and pay attention to detail. I mean, so those are all skills that you learn from the military. So a lot of people that get out, they think, well, I've got all the experience that I need. I'm just going to go get a job and leverage my experience. And then you get other people to get out and they say, I can't get a job doing what I really want to do until I get a college degree. So there's this experience versus college degree. What's your take on that?
Well, to answer the last point first, there are certain career fields where you absolutely need a degree.
Right.
If someone wants to, for example, become a doctor, they will have to go to pre-med
Mm-hmm.
and medical school.
Yep.
But then there are certain career fields where you don't necessarily need a degree. You might be able to get by with a certification program.
Mm-hmm.
I think because the corporate American world now is dominated by millennials, they understand more than ever the benefits of experience versus degree.
Right.
There's actually a lot of talk out there urging people not to go to college because it's just too hard to pay back the debt. And college definitely does not guarantee job stability anymore.
Right.
I think that going to college is a great thing to do, that people should aspire, because there are skill sets and values that you gain from going to college. It definitely expands you mentally, your critical thinking skills, your creativity, and so on and so forth. However, they should definitely not let that be a barrier to pursuing high level work, meaningful work, because there's ways to learn on your own. There's even programs like you have the Udemy, for example, is an online
Mm-hmm.
resource program where you can sign up to take courses. Some of those courses, or a lot of them, you can take them for $10 and they're taught by industry professionals. You can put that on your resume. I would go as far as to say, if you read a well recommended industry book and you actually put the lessons of the book to practice, put that on your resume. I know in my career field as a content marketing writer, if I were just getting started, number one, there's no college degree for that. But if I wanted street cred, I would offer my services to some companies or people who I know have their own businesses and ask them for a referral.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them for a referral on your LinkedIn page. If the person exiting the military does not have a LinkedIn page, they should set one up immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Then make connections and ask for referrals. And then eventually they will build their quote unquote street cred.
So you brought up my next question. That's LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it sounds to me like you value LinkedIn. A lot of people think that LinkedIn is the pseudo resume these days, or it's better than or good as or can totally replace the resume. What do you think?
I do think that LinkedIn is like an online resume, but better. If depending on how you want to brand and market yourself, it's kind of a cross between an online resume and social media. But what you don't want to do is be spammy on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn in particular, because it is for professional purposes. You definitely have to be careful about how you represent yourself on there. There's a lot of great tools to help you market yourself, but always keeping in mind that, this is your opportunity to market yourself and to show people in your industry and in the know why they should hire you, why you do have what it takes to be taken seriously.
Yeah, so LinkedIn's got two, like it's got the paid version, like I think they call it premium or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then they've got the free version. Now, for those getting out of the military, is it necessary to opt into the premium?
No, and truth be told, I don't opt into the premium. I've
Nope,
tried
I don't either.
I've tried it before. The premium gives you more benefits, such as you can communicate with companies that have set up certain features. You can see who is looking at your LinkedIn profile. Like right now, I have a free account, so I do get notifications that people are looking at my profile, but I don't always get to see who does it. If you have a paid version, you can see who does it, and then you can follow up with them and let them know, hey, I see that you looked at my profile. Are there any questions I can answer for you? So there are advantages, but definitely don't let the fact that you can't pay or don't want to pay stop you from using the free version to the full, because you can and it can work for you.
Right. And aside from having a complete profile, what's the one recommendation you have for anyone that should be using LinkedIn?
I would say use it as the marketing tool that it is. Align yourself with the right industry experts, and don't make the mistake of thinking that more is more. For example, a lot of people try to acquire as many connections as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people connect, but then they don't use LinkedIn or they don't check, they're not engaged with it. I would say really hone in and target on having the right connections. So definitely an issue of quality versus quantity.
Totally agree. Yep, absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's my number one recommendation. It's not a Facebook. Facebook, it's a popularity contest
Hmm.
kind of. The goal is to have as many likes and shares and follows and all of that. And a lot of people, if you, like we already talked about social media etiquette, right? And know what platform you're on, because if you try to take those etiquettes that's accepted in Facebook and you try to mimic or mirror those over on LinkedIn, you're going to be well, you're not going to have very much success, number one. And
No.
number two, you're going to find it very difficult to make those connections because it is a professional site and people, right, wrong, or indifferent, feel that they're being judged by the people that they connect with.
Hmm.
And they don't want to be seen connected to somebody that just doesn't understand the etiquette or doesn't, you know what I'm saying? So, if you want to make better connections, more relevant connections, understand that platform. And the only way of really learning it, I mean, I'm sure there's courses even on Udemy you mentioned.
Hmm.
I'm sure there's courses on there about LinkedIn, but you just got to get on there and you got to, try it out. Look what other people are doing. If you don't know how your profile should look or what you should be targeting, find some people that are in your industry or
Hmm.
in a industry that you're interested in entering, and look at their profiles. And I'm not saying do a copy paste drop in, but look at how it's structured and how their connections are made, and it's all about using it. And don't be afraid to get in there and use it. You're not going to break anything. So
I couldn't agree with you more. Find people who you admire, who are on the path and emulate them. Not directly imitate them, but emulate them. Make it your own,
Right.
but use what they're doing as a template. And also, going back to the mentality of coming out of the military, where, you had to do everything by the book, by the reg. There is a lot more flexibility as you're
Yeah.
branding yourself in the civilian world, and you're not going to break it. It is okay to make mistakes. It's not the end of the world, but you want to keep tweaking it. And as you learn things, as you come across information and ideas, go back and tweak it. I've tweaked my LinkedIn profile many times through the years.
Hmm.
I'm happy with where it's at now, but every time I tweaked it, I was happy until I grew and I learned, and then I tweaked it
Hmm.
more
Right.
and made
So
it.
living,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's a living document, much like a resume, right?
The thing is with resumes, people make the mistake of letting their resume stagnate when it should be a
Right.
living document.
Couldn't agree more. So you mentioned you're a current student going to college, and you're an entrepreneur. You got your own business. You're pretty busy, and a lot of people that I talk to, when I ask them if they're going to take advantage of their GI Bill when they get out of the military, a lot of what I get is, I'm too busy. I don't, I don't have time for that, or I don't live near a college or university. So, let's talk about you. How do you juggle, work and family and interests and what you're doing with your job and college all at the same time?
Okay, well, I'd like to clarify. I'm not currently attending college this semester, and I've had to take a break. Sometimes that is
Okay.
necessary. Sometimes you do have to prioritize what's going on in your life. I think it's crucial to go to school with a focus that you are going to finish. If you can, make that room in your life to go all the way and don't let anything get in the way. Prioritize it. Don't make excuses because life will happen. And then you put it off for months and then years, and then you're not going, and it's just that much harder to go back. Having
Hmm.
said that, again, with technology, there really isn't too many excuses. You don't have to go to campus. When you're younger, coming out of the military, it might make sense for you, but as you mature, there are always mature students, but you might not want to start out, particularly at the junior college level, with people who are 18 years old and you're old enough to be their parent and you're being taught as, someone coming out of high school. That's not
Right.
motivating.
Yeah.
So even the times that I did manage to go back, I am a huge fan of distance learning. And the great thing
Hmm.
about distance learning, you don't have to live, in the next town or the next state or country. You can do distance learning with your local community college. And just about
Yeah.
every community college has a program where you go on campus and you sign up for the distance learning program. You go to the department head and pick up your syllabus, your books, and then you follow along the curriculum either via video, online. As long as you're following along and taking a test, you usually do have to come back to the campus to take the test. But you can totally go at your own pace a lot of times or just follow along the syllabus. And those college credits are just as good as if you attended classes.
Right. Yep. Nice. So you can not only be a virtual assistant and work remotely, but you can also go to school remotely.
There are people who have earned their degrees remotely.
Yep.
Again, you can do it at the community college level. When you get to the university level, you're taking your last 2 years, you might want to transfer out. As long as they're willing to take your credits, you're good. And,
Right.
you might have to pay a little bit more if you live within a certain distance. Some colleges are exclusively digital.
Right.
And then
Yep.
there's programs that work specifically with working adults, knowing that you have career, that you have family, and they structure their programs and their curriculum for that niche of students. So there's
Hmm.
too many possibilities nowadays.
So what's your favorite book?
My favorite book is not a business book. I'm a huge fan of memoirs. I
Hmm.
actually plan on writing one of my own. So one of my favorite memoirs is called Memoirs by Tennessee Williams, and he actually inspires me because he was a digital nomad before. I can't even say digital because there was no digital in his time,
Yeah. Right.
but a lot of people don't know he wrote his plays on the road. He would rent apartments in Europe and different locales around the world, and he just kind of had, a cast of family around the world as he wrote his plays and come back to the States and produce creatively. He did create a home base in Key West, Florida, That was his only home that he bought. And as an artist, that appeals to me, and it's more possible than ever with technology and airfare deals the way they are. And again, travel's in my blood, and I feel like I'm a citizen of the world, so I aspire to that. So there's another memoir, but I'm a huge fan of memoirs. I think that real life is a lot more interesting than fiction.
Yep. Yeah.
My grandmom used to tell me that the truth is stranger than fiction. So I've
That's
seen that
right.
time and again.
Yep. So, what's your favorite quote?
Gosh, I'm such a quoteaholic, so it's hard for me to narrow on one. But I will tell you one, and I hope that the female veterans that are listening to this latch on to this, and that is, she thought she could, so she did.
Nice. I like that. Even though I'm not a female veteran, I still like that. Um, all right, wrapping up now. As you know, this show is called Change Your POV.
Hmm.
I like to ask all my guests a closing question, and it's a little bit deep, so let's give it a go.
Okay.
Give us an example of a scenario or a time when you believed or thought something one way, but an event or circumstance occurred that forced you to see it from a different perspective. What was it? And tell us about that experience.
Oh boy, how much time do I have to come up with an answer? That is a hard thing for me to answer right now. I know I've been through something where I've had to change my perspective. Okay, I thought of one, and it's one for my personal life. And it helped put me on the path that I am now, both personally and professionally. When I was in my mid 20s to late 20s, I had a lot of people around me that, really were caring for me and try to be close to me. And because, I came from a traumatic background, as a child,
Hmm.
and transitioning as a young adult, I didn't realize that what was love or caring a concern or believing in me, that they saw things in me that I couldn't see in myself, talents and skills and abilities and just who I was, personally. I didn't take it that they, were hoping and wishing great things for me.
Hmm.
I didn't believe that what I did mattered. I didn't believe that my behavior mattered. I didn't believe that any of my talents or skills mattered. I don't even think I registered it as that. And then around the time where I was 29, turning 30, I had an epiphany. And I looked back on these relationships and I realized I let a lot of people down or disappointed or I didn't see myself the way they did. And it occurred to me that I didn't think that who I was at that time mattered because I didn't think that I mattered.
Mm.
And I had to learn that I had worth and I mattered. And that turned me around, not only personally, but it drives me professionally. I am very careful about people, how I treat them, how I come across to them, both personally and professionally. Because number one, I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to disrupt their belief in me. I
Hmm.
want people to perceive me as being a person of integrity and having concern for them. And that really drives me also in my business pursuits. I want people to
Yeah.
be able to trust me. I want them to know that it's not just about the money. I want to create professional partnerships where I really care about them and their business, and I want them to succeed. And I'm willing to use what I bring to the table to help them to succeed and to elevate them. And we both are being elevated and brought higher, and creating a win-win situation. So,
Hmm.
but it really took me going through that epiphany about my personal self-worth and really gaining a point of view that the way that I or anybody treats people, both professionally or personally, is a reflection of how you feel about yourself.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty deep. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's a very personal story, and but somebody out there is going to hear your message and hear your story and going to resonate with it, and they'll take something from that. So for that, I thank you.
Well, thank you, and it's been an honor to be able to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. So where can the listeners find out more about you and where they can find you out online?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, my virtual assistant site can be located at twistoflemonade.com. If anyone is interested in communicating with me on Twitter, my handle is positive_twist. If anyone would like to find me on LinkedIn, they can go to LinkedIn, and my handle there is the Content Pro. Or if you just like to send me an email, you can shoot me an email at justaskwriter@gmail.com.
Nice. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of the information, and I know the guests in the audience are going to get a whole lot of great value out of that. All right, what a great interview that was. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Change Your POV podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Lazary. If you want to check out everything that we talked about on today's episode, we've got all the links and everything on the show notes over at changeyourpov.com/episode 18. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.